How can the lack of unanimity in a Congress, the topic I'd like to talk to you in more detail is, of course, the American aid to Ukraine. This is topic number one in Ukraine. And how can the lack of unanimity in Congress regarding aid to Ukraine affect the decisions of other states to assist Kyiv?
Well, first of all, it's a pity that the US Congress actually took hostage Ukraine as a hostage in this situation, because it's not because of Ukraine, but because of the ongoing presidential campaign and because of the willingness of the Republican Party to use this situation as a leverage and to get something that is really relevant to the American people. But in general, I'm more, let's say, positive, and I'm more, let's say, enthusiastic about the prospects of the Congress voting for the supplement and to provide Ukraine with additional security assistance. We know that in the House there are some hardcore, let's say, opponents of the assistance to Ukraine, and they actually blocked this assistance for quite a long period of time. But in the Senate, we have a majority of the Republicans who would gladly vote for this supplement, but they decided to, let's say, to use this as a leverage against the Democrats, and they want this border issue being solved, the change of the border in immigration policy and other things. But I believe that the Congress will resolve it, and there are some good signs about it. The Democrats are ready to discuss further compromises and the middle ground between the parties on the issue. So I don't think it's a huge problem for us at the moment. From the other hand, as you rightly said, that it's going to be an increasing problem for Ukraine. I mean, the lack of American leadership and the lack of American support, material support for Ukraine. And we've seen after the previous speaker, Kevin McCarthy, was outed of the post, President Biden called his European alliance and he asked to step in and fill the gap in capabilities for Ukraine. And just in the other day, the United Kingdom decided to provide Ukraine with additional 500 million pounds worth assistance. So I believe that in this difficult time, the Europeans will step up and they will cover this, let's say, lack of materials that Ukraine badly needs on our battlefields.
Mm. As we know, the Republicans announced to the White House a list of demands they would support to assist Kyiv. Of course, this is a matter of political bargaining because they insisted on the migration policy and they wanted to link it to the aid to Ukraine, yes, in one package. Or maybe the Republicans not sufficiently informed about how important it is to help Ukraine now. And my question is, where did the real Republican hoax go? By the way, here with us in the studio, the American political scientist, Mr. Smart. So please, if you don't mind, if you'd like, you can add and also give me and our audience answer to this question. Where did Republican hoax go?
So the Republican Party has had a shift. Historically, the party of Ronald Reagan was very aggressive to defend American values. When I say American values, it's really just human values. That is the support for freedom, the support for democracy, and to work with countries that also embrace these values. So it is quite shocking today that there is something such as the situation in Ukraine, where Russia, a totalitarian state, has attacked a democratic state, an ally of the United States, and that the United States has not done more, largely because they're Republicans. You would have expected that to have never been that way. Reagan would have never allowed that. So what happened? I would argue that it mostly comes down to the past decade and a half, but most acutely, Donald Trump's rise to power has changed the party. The political party that it was before is no longer there. The party has become very populistic. The party has become totally focused on what is occurring domestically in the United States, much more focused on social issues, and much more focused on things that are, I would argue, of less significance to global events. And this sort of isolationism that they bring with them, with the Make America Great Again, this is something that we see playing out currently in what the Republicans are doing or failing to do in U.S. Congress to support Ukraine.
Yeah. Mr. Khara, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes. What would be your answer like on this question? Where
Well,
is... Yeah, please.
Yeah, well, certainly we have the phenomenon of Trump, who is the best friend of different type of authoritarian leaders, including Mr. Putin. He was cousin up with Mr. Putin. But it would be fair to say that it was the Trump administration, rather not himself, but his best military and national security guys who started to provide Ukraine with the security, with the lethal assistance. So I believe we cannot pursue those guys who are voting this week on Ukrainian supplement because they are sure, they know that Ukraine badly needs these armaments to defeat Russian imperial and aggressive ambitions, not with regard to Ukraine, but to the whole of Europe. And actually, the United States president said that he said that, just a second, I had this, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay.
Joseph Biden said history will judge us harshly if we turn our back on freedom's course in Ukraine. We can't let Putin win. So the Americans in general and the Republicans particularly understand the importance of this assistance. But from the other hand, they need to let's say, pursued their political goals, domestic goals in the face of the elections. So I completely understand what's going on. And what's positive about the Republican Party, recently they published, the chairmen of the House Foreign Relations, Intelligence and Arms Committee, they published a Victory for Ukraine plan, and they believe that the next administration, the next Republican administration, needs to step up this support for Ukraine, and they need to let's say, to check all those errors that the previous administration had done. They've been criticizing the Biden administration for the procrastination in providing Ukraine with assistance, including such things like dragging the feet with regard to the systems that have been provided to Ukraine. So they want to be to create and to establish a more Republican-like policies with regard to Ukraine and fending off the authoritarian regime like the Russian one, because they believe it's not just about Ukraine and Europe in general, but because it's about the other authoritarian regime, Chinese authoritarian regime, Iranian or Northern Korean, who are watching this war, and they judge American resolve as the sign of weakness, and they may take some actions that will trigger the Third World War, like in Taiwan Strait.
Mr. Khara, now all the Trump's rhetoric looks and perceived as absolutely pro-Russian. But I remember very well, and you remember, I'm sure, very well, the times when it was the Trump administration that provided Ukraine with lethal weapon, namely Javelin complex. Perhaps such rhetoric is related to the desire to appear decisive in front of future voters. This is the question, again, for you, Mr. Smart, and for you, Mr. Khara. So first, Mr. Khara, please.
First of all, we will see whether Mr. Trump will get this nomination from the Republican Party, and especially facing numerous, more than 90 charges, including criminal ones. And we see that Nikki Haley is just catching up the second runner. I mean the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. So it's not a solved issue with regard to the candidate from the Republican Party. Secondly, if we are talking about the rhetoric of Mr. Trump, certainly he sounded a bit pro-Russian, but you are completely right. People like General Mattis, Robert McMaster and others, they laid the ground of containing Russia. They laid the ground for support of Ukraine, and the first javelins were supplied by the Trump administration. But the most important thing is that what we see right now. The second term of Mr. Trump might be disastrous because he is listening to the people like Tucker Carlson, who is the demagogue and populist, and he is the most possibly vocal anti-Ukrainian voice in the far right corner of the American political spectrum. And there are some other voices who are saying that they should abandon Ukraine and they should focus on other issues like deterring China in South China Sea. But in general, this is the, let's say, illiteracy in strategic thinking, and it is misunderstanding of the real threat that Russia poses to the whole of Europe and not just Europe. Should I remind the American friends that the more than 1,000 strategic intercontinental missiles are pointed at Russia, so, sorry, at the United States. The United States it was declared as a sort of arch-enemy of Russia. So Russia is doing a lot of malign activities, a lot of things to undermine the American leadership. So in de facto, the United States are in war with Russia. It's not a kinetic war, which is going on in Ukraine, but it's ideological and the war beyond this level of kinetic action.